Good morning, everyone. Hello, and welcome back to the next tutorial of ours. So, children, I hope you've had a good break, though you had examinations in between, but that is definitely required and, of course, is the most important part of our academic calendar. Now, children, we have already talked about several ways of implementing techniques of how can we develop our linguistic skills. Now, children, there is one word that is of utmost importance or the topmost priority. You innovation does not creep in, right? So the more you practice different concepts, possibly uh, that have been self-assessed, that have been self-developed, only then you will create an environment for yourselves that is highly lacking in today's academic culture. So, children, we are going to talk about verbs. We've already discussed verbs in a few tutorials of ours, but today we're going to talk about innovation in the family of verbs. What is innovation? Being creative means innovation, right? So, we have to be creative, we have to develop something out of what has been taught to us already. So, we are going to today talk about auxiliary verbs, one being used as auxiliary verbs, that is helping verbs, and second, the auxiliary verbs being used as main verbs. Before we head on with this tutorial of ours, let's discuss what this word auxiliary means. Now, auxiliary simply means helping or something that is in a supportive role, something that is a supplement to something else. So anything that helps you, that means it's an auxiliary thing. For example, if I say a ship moves with the help of two engines, out of which only one is operated at a time. If one fails, then the other one will be called as an auxiliary engine because it's a helping engine. It helps another engine, right? So, same is the case with verbs. If there are two verbs, therefore, one will automatically, autonomously have to help the other one. So the one that is in the helping role or is providing a supplement or is providing a support will become an auxiliary verb. It's very easy to understand. What do you mean by progressive arrangements? Progress simply means to take the graph gradually upwards where you are developing something, possibly skills, possibly marks, or something else, right? So, we're going to talk about progressive arrangement or sequence of verbs, how we've discussed it. So, this is a slide, this is a screen that is sharing what exactly has been taught to you in the family of verbs so far. So we've talked about finite verbs that have a close arrangement or agreement with the subject and they decide the tense itself. Whereas when we talked about non-finite verbs, they were different forms. They were inherited forms of the main verbs itself, but they were unable to decide the tense. And of course, they had no direct connectivity with the subject. For example, the participles, the past participle, the present participle, if you remember, and of course the gerunds, right? So today we're going to talk about auxiliary verbs, and in the next tutorial, we're going to talk about auxiliary modal verbs. So let's talk about auxiliary verbs right now. Helping or aiding or supplementing verbs are called auxiliary verbs, as I've already introduced this word auxiliary to you. Now, if you talk about modal verbs, children, modal verbs are of utmost importance when it comes to speaking in a language or particularly in English. Why so? Because if you see the examples that have been quoted under the tag of auxiliary modal verbs, let me read a few of them. Can, could, ought to, might, would, shall. Now, these are words, modal verbs that are used in parlance, in communicating, all right? So, if you ask a teacher, can I go to washroom or can I go and visit somewhere? Or if you, in the same fashion, you ask may. One is polite and the other is more casual, which of course cannot be used while speaking to a teacher. So this is a differentiation. This is a practical differentiation that has to be implemented while you talk. right? So we're not going to deal with this concept today. In this tutorial, we're going to talk about auxiliary verbs today, not auxiliary modal verbs. So let's come to auxiliary verbs. There are two ways of using these helping verbs. They can either be used as helping verbs or they can be used as main verbs. Let's see how it's done. Now, auxiliary verbs, we've already discussed. Auxiliary means help, subordinate, supportive, right? Now, examples of auxiliary verbs are is, am, are, was, were, has, have, had. You've already come, I'm pretty sure that you've already come across all these words before. So, these are tagged under the family of auxiliary verbs. Now, there are two ways of using these auxiliary verbs. Now, children, you must have seen that often in my videos I've used this word utility. So, what is this utility important for? Only because everything that is being taught has to be utilized, has to have a practical implementation and implication in your life. If it lacks, then definitely we are not heading in the right direction. So you come across an info that is needed, that is short needed to be implemented. That is why I have regularly discussed this word utility with absolutely everything until today. So let's talk about auxiliary verbs that can be used as helping verbs. Now, children, if these are helping verbs, now supposedly you are doing something and I am helping you with something. So I become an auxiliary person because I'm not. When two verbs come together in a sentence, the first verb will fall as a helping verb. Let's see how it's done. Now, let's take down the definition first. When they here refers to auxiliary verbs. When auxiliary verbs aid or are placed before main verbs and they provide a support or help to the main verbs. They behave as auxiliaries or auxiliary verbs. Now, how do you judge? As I've already told you, there will be a combination of two verbs and or which will render the first verb to be an auxiliary or a helping verb. It's very easy. Let's take down a few examples so that we understand it better. Now, examples of auxiliary verbs as helping verbs. Now, what you will see in all these examples, on all these upcoming examples, is that there will be an arrangement where you'll see two verbs coming together. So let's see what exactly is happening here. In the first sentence, you've got are broken. The second sentence is got is inculcating. Third is got has slept. Though there is a word not in between has and slept, it only shows negation. The negative sentences, as we've already discussed in the very first video of mine, though that was dedicated to types of sentences. The fourth you would see has brought. The fifth will give you are operating. The sixth will give you was suffering, and the seventh will give you were littering. Now, what's common here? What is the commonality that you can pick from all these sentences or examples? The commonality here is an arrangement of two verbs falling or adjoining each other. So if I say are broken, are becomes the auxiliary verb, that is the helping verb. Why does it become a helping verb? Because it's actually helping the other verb that is present right next to it or that is written right after it. So this is the exact methodology how these things or how auxiliary verbs are used as helping verbs. There has to be one governing or one main verb which will be helped by another verb. Then the other verb will be known as auxiliary verbs. Right. So let's take down example number 5. The schools are operating online classes to carry forward the momentum of education. If you're not, if you don't get into the groove, if you're not in momentum with education, you will definitely lack that grasping power. So, in order to be in momentum with the educational process, no matter whatever it is, offline, that is face to face, or online, you have to have a severe and intense connectivity with everything that has been taught to you until today. So, the schools are operating, are operating. Okay, amongst the two verbs present here, are and operating, which one do you think decides the tense of the sentence? Yes, of course, it definitely is the auxiliary verb. The auxiliary verb, no matter wherever it is used, in whatever fashion it is used, it will be the decision maker, the tense driver in the sentence. So if it is, let's talk about the sixth example. He was suffering from fever for past 5 days. So if I say was suffering, I could have even changed it to is suffering or they are suffering. So what decides the tense here is the auxiliary verb itself. So what is the arrangement that guarantees that the auxiliary verb is being used as a helping or an auxiliary verb is the combination of the two verbs. So this is how it goes. A simple funda, a simple technicality of English language. Now, auxiliary verbs can also be used as main verbs. Now, how do we do that? It is no rocket science. It's very simple to understand that if I only use the auxiliary verb in a sentence, I have nothing else to think of or to carry forward, but only the auxiliary or the main verb. So that will be the tense deciding verb, and of course will be the main highlighted verb. So if there is just one verb, the auxiliary verb itself present in the sentence, it becomes or it functions as the main verb. Let's take down the definition first. When they are used, they here again refers to the auxiliary verbs. When the auxiliary verbs are used all alone by themselves, where they alone decide the tense in a sentence, they are referred to as main verbs. Now, how to judge? When only one auxiliary verb is present in a sentence, it has the authority to decide the tense of a sentence and it functions as a main verb. Let's take down a few examples and understand it better. Auxiliary may verbs as main verbs. Now, what you'll observe in all these examples is that only one verb will be highlighted with the or in blue. This is sure for the purpose that we understand that the words that have been highlighted in blue are the auxiliary verbs, but on the contrary, they function as main verbs. So she is a great athlete. There is nothing else that describes the tense, that defines or decides the tense in the sentence. Moreover, there's nothing else that shows any action happening. So here I can see that there is a be form, that is. So is again is a form of be is also a verb, right? So next sentence gives you Devinder has a bunch of exclusive photographs of exquisite birds. The doorbell has a different frequency. So do you find any other verb here connecting to the main subject? Of course not. So it is or these all highlighted in blue are the auxiliary verbs which are functioning as the main verbs. Let's talk about the second last, that is possibly 3, 4, 5, 6th sentence. I had a Nikon P900 camera which I sold for 50,000 bucks or 50,000 rupees. Now, had is the one or the auxiliary verb that is functioning as the main verb. This decides the tense and it says that the sentence is written in simple past tense. So, this is how it goes. Auxiliary verbs can be used as main verbs or they can be used as auxiliary verbs, just like they are or just like the family they belong to. It's just the arrangement, it's just the placement that changes its meaning and, of course, its utility. So, children, there is just one brief idea about grasping anything at all that is being taught to you by different teachers in different subjects. You can prepare precise means exact, to the point, bullseye, one liners. If you don't understand something that is elaborate, that is quite large, that is widespread, that has a large area of interpretation, what you can do is you can prepare one liners. जो भी एक वाइड स्प्रेड कोर्स है, अगर आपको नहीं समझ में आता है किसी टॉपिक का, आप सिर्फ एक लाइन में उसे ब्रीफ कीजिए. इफ यू ब्रीफ इट इन वन लाइन, दिस विल डेफिनेटली गाइड you through any of your difficulties in any of your subjects. So, thank you, stay safe, and of course, stay healthy. The last word that I have written on the screen is sayonara, which is a casual English, although it's a Japanese word which simply means or is a synonym of goodbye, though it has been casually accepted in English. So, children, thank you so much. Please stay safe and stay healthy. God bless all.